Hello, my name is Thunderclaww, and we're here with Micky, Neilson, and Kenyon to discuss the new book for the Diablo 3 series called Diablo Storm of Light.
Hey, hello everybody.
Hello.
Okay, so let's jump right into it. So Storm of Light launched 2 days ago on February 4th, and it is by far my favorite Diablo 3 book that has been published.
Love to hear that.
Awesome.
So let's if we can get a little background on you, Nate. So what's your experience with the Diablo series?
Well, I started working with Blizzard with StarCraft Ghost Spectres. That was my first collaboration with them. I'd written a handful of original novels before that, and they'd read a short sci-fi novel I'd written called Prime, and were interested in working with me. And so we had a conversation about that and hit it off, and led to that book. And that was so much fun that we decided we wanted to work together for Diablo: The Order, which was the last book, my first Diablo novel, that came out with the D3, the new game. And that was a lot of fun, and so we did it again. So this is how we've gotten to Storm of Light.
You know, I just want to add to that. I know we're here to promote Storm of Light, but if folks out there listening to this have not read Prime, read Prime. That was awesome. Love that.
Thanks, Micky.
I'll have to check it out. So have you actually played through Diablo 2, Diablo 3 while writing this book, or maybe The Order?
Yeah, actually it was a great thrill for me. I went out there, flew out to their headquarters for a brainstorming session for The Order, and they surprised me there with an opportunity to play the beta of D3. And so, you know, I that was just a great thrill. I got a couple of hours anyway to play around with the beta. It was really a blast. So, you know, of course, I have played the games before. I'm not a huge gamer these days. I don't have time, and I'm the type of person I lose myself and stuff like that, and I don't get anything else done. So I know I can't afford to do that these days. So I'm not as big a gamer as I used to when I was younger. But you know, I've played the Diablo games and StarCraft games, of course, and love them. So the big preparation for all these books for me really is reading the prior novels, prior graphic novels, you know, reading the wikis, talking to fans, talking to Blizzard, and just really learning everything I can about what has been done up to that point, what the universe is all about, just getting as many details as I can possibly get crammed into my head.
All right, sounds good. So you mentioned that you flew out to Blizzard HQ to write this and The Order. So how does the process start off? Do you come up with the idea, or does Blizzard come up with the idea and approach you? And how does the meat of the story develop?
Blizzard has an idea. They come to me with an idea. They're always awesome, so that's great. And then we talk. Usually we have a conference call or something, go back and forth a little bit, talk about the idea. They'll send me some sort of treatment or write-up of what they're thinking. And then I'll take usually, you know, a couple weeks or so to kind of get into that and think about it and come up with some of my own thoughts and start to research, you know, the events around the novel's plot. And then I fly out there and we sit down for a creative meeting, and, you know, I'll play the game, I'll talk to their team, and we'll have a great lunch together usually. And, you know, the ideas fly back and forth. At that point, I've usually got a lot of things that I would like to bring up and talk about, and ideas that I have, and they have more ideas, and it's really a lot of fun. It's very different than my original stuff, my other writing, in that it's very collaborative, and there's a lot of energy in the room, and we play well off each other. So after that all happens, I take all that home and come up with an outline, a detailed outline, and we go back and forth on that with edits, and at some point we're all happy, and then I start working on the first draft.
All right, sounds good. So let's actually start jumping into the book. So Diablo 3 Vanilla, as it's called right now, ended. We defeated the Primeval, and what happened? What are the events that eventually lead up to the Storm of Light?
Well, Storm of Light takes place a couple of months or so after the events of D3, and the Black Soul Stone has, as you saw at the end of D3, has fallen from the heavens, but it didn't fall all the way out into Sanctuary. It fell to a lower area and was recovered by the angels. So it's in the high heavens, being protected, being watched over by the council. And Tyrael was now newly mortal and is sort of reevaluating his role, is seeing that the Soul Stone is having some sort of corruptive effect on the heavens, and the rest of the council, they don't seem to be aware of this, and he has to finally decide what he needs to do. What he has to act. So he decides he's going to form a new Haradrim, and is sort of an all-star cast.
Yeah.
And and that's where the fun really starts. And the plan is that they have to infiltrate the heavens and steal the stone to save the high heavens and save Sanctuary.
Right. So let's talk about the cast. The cast of this new Haradrim is insane. So basically, you have characters from almost every single published Diablo novel just combining together into this super Haradrim. So
yeah, this was the concept that I really energized me when Blizzard started talking about it. I mean, the possibilities. I was also intimidated by it to some extent because I would be working with characters that were created by some authors that I know and love and respect, and it's a sensitive thing to take on a character that somebody else has created like that. So I wanted to really think it through. What's that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to really think it through, to make sure that I was going to be able to do this and do it properly. And after thinking about it and a couple of characters in particular, whether I wanted to take them on or not, I thought, if we're going to do this, we got to go all out. I mean, this has got to be, we've got to, leave nothing at the door, and so once we decided to dive in that way, then the rest was easy. And I think, committing fully that way was the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you've got Tyrael, the famous Tyrael, who has been around for 12, actually like 14 odd years now. He's been in all the games, and he's one of the main characters. You've got Zale, who's probably the most famous necromancer. You've got Mikulov, who is from the Order, which you wrote, and then you have this new. Well, not new, but you have these 3 characters from the sort of Justice comics, which have never been featured in the Diablo universe. And so, do you feel like you had some struggle with giving enough page time to all these major characters that once starred in their own books?
Yeah, that was a real challenge. It really was. I mean, that was one of the things I think, Mickey, I think we talked about this early on, right? I mean, I think, that was something I was concerned with. You've got all these all-stars in the book. You want to give them all enough page time, as you say, and enough, attention and backstory. They all have backstories, so you want to do all this, but you also have we had kind of an epic story to tell, so you don't want to get bogged down in that stuff either. So it was a balancing act. I don't know, Mickey, you remember these conversations? I think we talked about it early on and tried to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, you really have to pick your battles with something like that when it's, an ensemble cast. There are some that are they're going to get more attention than the others, and you pick the ones that are going to have the strongest arcs and that reflect the overall theme of the story that you're trying to tell. And so Tyrael and Jacob for sure. And I just want to mention with Jacob that for folks who, have read the Sword of Justice graphic novel, or even for those who haven't, that was originally planned as a series of comic books. And so when we came up with the idea of Jacob, and he was going to serve as the aspect of justice on Sanctuary, carrying Tyrael's sword, Eldruin, and he was going to go around and right wrongs and do all these amazing things. And then eventually, the sword would just disappear from him one day.
Yeah, it must have been a shock.
Yeah, exactly. And it's because Tyrael reformed and got his sword back. And so we were going to explore all that, and we were going to have all these great adventures with Jacob. That didn't quite work out. We ended up with the one graphic novel, but then we kind of came to Nate and said, so here's this backstory. So let's pretend that all of these, wonderful adventures happened. And let's pretend that Jacob basically, woke up one day going, hey, where's my sword? Right? and then let's kind of get into his character and figuring out, it's a great character crisis for him, to think, okay, well, what am I without that sword that was empowering him? And I thought that was a very compelling conflict for the character to go through, and Nate had a lot of fun with it, and I'm sure it was challenging because those comic books other than the graphic novel did not exist.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, kind of a question: when Tyrael was forming his Haradrim, why didn't he consider the player character? I mean, the player character did just defeat the primeval. Wouldn't he be the best?
Well, yeah. So that's an interesting one. With the player character, we have to be very careful because the player character can be a number of different classes and even genders.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so we can't really pinpoint one because then we're excluding all the others. And so for the fiction, unfortunately, we'll usually say something like the champion or something along those lines,
right.
and we just have to do that. It's kind of the hand that we're dealt, with the way the game plays.
Right. And I think we made sure to make a reference to the player character in the book. He's, off, doing on another quest of sorts,
Yeah.
so, so it's one of those things where you gotta acknowledge it in some way, but you can't get too deeply into it.
Right. So let's talk about where this novel takes place. It basically takes place in two different places. You have the High Heavens and you have Sanctuary. And so Sanctuary we've been in before, right? We've all the other novels are basically set in Sanctuary. But the High Heavens haven't really been explored in detail previously. So did you have to come up with like new phrases or figure out how to describe this majestic place?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of fun with that, and I know Mick can talk about his side of things, and I know he had a lot of meetings there, and they did a lot of brainstorming, which was really helpful to me. But I had a lot of fun, coming up with, what do you name the angelic guard, and those sorts of things. I mean, coming up with names for the destroyer, and those are all things that didn't really exist, or some of them were things that didn't exist, and so it's a real thrill for me as a writer to be able to help contribute, to the lore of this game, which millions of people love.
Right.
So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
right.
we definitely had a blast on our side, having those meetings and just sitting down, me, Chris Metzen, Brian Kendrigan, and a few others, and basically saying, okay, let's pretend that we're humans going into the high heavens, and for instance, we're going into the realm of Imperius, and what does that look like, and what are we experiencing, and how completely overwhelming is it? What do we feel? What do we hear? I mean, it was just, those were great meetings, and it was a lot of fun to come up with all that stuff, and then we just continued collaborating with Nate on it, and I think those are some of the most fun parts of the book, for sure.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the setting because, I mean, we're usually, invading the Hells, and the Hells, they're all on fire and everything's being destroyed. And here, I mean, you're going to the High Heavens, you think, oh, everything is going to be nice and beautiful, rainbows, unicorns. But in fact, light can be almost as dangerous as the dark.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you picked up on that. I think that was one of the things we really wanted to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So Reaper of Souls is launching in a couple weeks, but the cinematic for Reaper of Souls was happened like a couple months ago, and in it we kind of see like the ending of Storm of Light. I mean, not per se exactly what happens, but we know what should happen afterwards. Like, did you
right.
was it like difficult to write where the ending was already known and is probably known by someone that is reading the book?
I mean, it's both difficult. It's sort of difficult and also helpful, and if that makes any sense. I mean, you know where you're going, you know, and when you're writing a novel, a lot of times when you're writing original fiction, you know, a lot of times you don't necessarily know where you're going. So there's this sort of, you know, supportive net underneath you, you know, when you're working in a universe like Diablo. You have a roadmap, you have you know, details that you know you need to fit in there. And the ending was one. In this case, the ending was one of them. I will say, you know, the process of writing this book. I mean, it's a long process. You know, this is well over a year ago that we were kicking around concepts, and a full year ago, as of, you know, basically last week when I started the first draft. Wow. So, you know, a lot of those things weren't as fleshed out. You know, I remember when I went out there for that creative, I watched that cinematic. They showed it to me, but it was all just sort of, you know, very rough pencil art, and that was, you know, it was very much in process or just, you know, kind of being fleshed out. So at that point, certainly we were very aware that, you know, we weren't really sure at that point when the book was going to hit the shelves, how long all this was going to take, and we had an idea, but we weren't positive. So, you know, there's a tightrope to be walked in terms of giving enough of what's happening afterwards in the story to make this novel work, to make the story in the novel work, but not giving so much away that you mess up any of Blizzard's plans or, you know, ruin the game in any way.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about like having a safety net and having characters already established. Did you think about introducing, you know, some new characters to this Herodric Order team?
In this case, no. I think we really wanted, once we committed to this, you know, all-star team kind of idea, there wasn't any room for anybody new, really. And in my mind, I kind of had some new characters already, at least, you know, they knew for me in terms of Mikolov and Thomas and Cullen from the Order. You know, those three characters I helped create, you know, from that book. So, you know, I was kind of developing their stories further as I went along in this book. So the rest of them were, you know, characters obviously that existed apart from something that I had done. So, you know, I kind of felt like I had, I don't know, my characters already that I was working with. And then I was adding others. And the challenge in that was definitely big enough that I didn't need to take on another new one.
Yeah. So Diablo the Order, that was also probably my second favorite book, simply because we really get to know who Deckard Cain was, right?
Right.
You go all into his past, you all go into his mind. With this book, I mean, we really start to discover Tyrael. And Tyrael is, I don't know, probably on par with Deckard Cain in terms of fan base.
Right.
Did you have any like trouble transitioning this, you know, powerful, angelic, mortal angel into a person in a book?
I did. I really did. And that was one of the things that I struggled with early on and wondered how I would handle early on when we talked about the concept. You know, it's one thing to write about a human. You know, everybody can relate to that to some extent, and Deckard Cain's struggles, as wild and dark as his history was, and the thing, obviously he faced things that none of us are going to face in our real lives, but he's still human. He has human emotion and you know, all those reactions. Whereas with Tyrael, you know, I think it was important early on for us to try to define, you know, who and what he is now, you know, as a mortal. He's not quite human. He's not an angel. He's not an immortal.
He's not someone
mortal.
who's ever existed before.
Yeah. So, you know, once we kind of started to define what that meant, okay, well, he's got a physical body. He's dealing with all these physical aches and pains and processes that he didn't have to deal with before. He's got emotion. He's feeling things that he doesn't really understand, and he has to come to grips with, and he has to begin to, you know, figure out how to deal with. And he has his own, you know, failures and his own guilt and sort of insecurities now that come with the territory. And once all that started to fall into place, then it became clearer, how to represent him. And I wanted very much to keep Tyrael's majesty and his, honor and his, sort of heroic kind of nature intact. But I also wanted him to struggle, and I think certainly Micky talked about this when we first talked about this book, the concept of this book. We all, I think, wanted to show him, trying to come to grips with this stuff and losing his faith in himself and trying to figure out who he was and whether he was strong enough now to lead this challenge.
Right. So I want to address attention to the cover of the book. The cover is beautiful. I don't know. You see Imperius with his majestic wings and Solarian, his spear, and
right.
This is basically the first time we really glimpse into the archangels and their council, right? Because in the past, we've seen them from afar. We rescued one, we almost fought another, but here we get to see that heaven isn't actually all that peaceful right now.
Yeah, exactly. They're not that much different from us, really. It's almost like the Greek and Roman pantheons when you look at them. They're just as human as anybody else in some respects. And I definitely have to give a shout out to Laurel Austin for the incredible cover art. I agree. It's one of my favorite covers of any of the IPs that we've done. I think it's just beautiful.
So, Storm of Light, it definitely, as we've talked, draws upon a lot of previous, novels, comic books, even in-game knowledge. Do you think someone that hasn't read all this lore, like a lot of people, like I have, would still be able to enjoy Storm of Light?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I think that was another goal of all of ours to, make this stand alone as a novel first and foremost. And I think you do that by creating characters that people care about and I can identify with, and people that the readers want to know, what happens to these characters. And once you hook people that way, I think you can tell any story you want, in terms of, the story itself needs to be compelling, but in terms of wherever you are, what universe you're putting it in, it almost doesn't matter as much as long as you've hooked people into that connection and, they live or die by the characters, and then you've got your story. And I think that, this moves quickly enough and there's just enough backstory, or I hope there is anyway, to fill in the blanks for people who don't know that much without bogging the story down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I've heard, the Avengers analogy a couple of times, and I think it's really a good one. If you go and you watch the Avengers movie, and if you haven't watched the other movies, it's still one hell of a ride. You get a lot out of it. So,
right.
Similar kind of thing. Yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to be able to come up with an answer to this, but if you had to set the original Haradrim, so you have Tal Rasha and Jared Kane and Zoltan Kuhl on one side, and the new Haradrim on the other side, who would win?
That's a great question. I'll let Micky answer that one.
Oh man, that's a fun one. Well, I go back to the Avengers again, honestly, when you get these superpowers going and battling it out with each other, the fun is really just in the battle and watching the fight. I think that would just be fun to watch and without necessarily picking a winner. I love it.
Oh, okay. So Next novel is going to be Old Haradrim versus New Haradrim?
I can see it, right? Yeah, it sounds great. I love it.
Versus,
that would be one epic showdown.
I like it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Nate and Micky.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So Diablo Storm of Light, it's already available. It's you can order it on Amazon. Is it in the Blizzard store?
I believe it is in the Blizzard store, but definitely Amazon, Barnes and Noble, anywhere else where books are sold.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. Thanks again.